amount or the size of the percentage of the population that's poor in first world countries is, in the sense of poverty, as we've lived it throughout human history, it's minuscule. Almost nobody is poor in the first world. If the standard for poverty is the way an average person lived 200 years ago, or the way most people live in Cambodia, or most people live in Africa. Nobody is poor in England, if that's your standard for poverty. So what happens? How do we define poverty in the UK and in the United States? We take a bell chart, and we curve everybody based on wealth, and we say the bottom 20%, they're poor. Well, of course, there's always going to be a bottom 20%. But in the United States, and I don't know the statistics in the UK, the United States, the poorest Americans have air conditioning, have cars, have cell phones, not to mention electricity and running water, which we take for granted. Nobody, very few people in Cambodia have any of those things, including electricity. So there's no poverty in America in those relative types of terms. Why are there still people who are poor? There's still people who are poor, A, because that's how we define it. There are always going to be people at the bottom, because we've got a curve. But secondly, because in my view, to the extent the United States and other first world countries have adopted statist policies, socialist policies, they create poverty. Not capitalism. Statism creates poverty. Socialism creates poverty. So I can give you lots of examples. Take the minimum wage. Minimum wage is a favorite topic in America right now. But the minimum wage is very simple economics. When you artificially raise the price of something, you get more or less of that something. If you artificially raise the price of something, do you get more of that or less of that? Do people want more of it or less of it? Less. If I make the iPhones twice the cost, are you going to buy more or fewer of them? You're going to buy fewer of them. If you raise the price of labor, of unskilled, uneducated labor, are people going to want more of it or less of it? Less of it. So McDonald's now, and all the fast food chains in the United States now, because the minimum wage is being raised to 15 in many cities, are now seriously experimenting, and soon it will be a fact, with iPads, where you will go into a store and order your food, and there'll be nobody standing behind the counter. Nobody. And indeed, there is a machine in Silicon Valley today that will do the whole hamburger flipping job. From baking the buns to putting the slice of beef inside and all the vegetables and everything, all automated without a single human hand in it. It's very expensive, but you know what? You raise the minimum wage enough, and they will replace it. Now, why is that related to poverty? Because what you're doing is you're taking a whole segment of the population, typically young black men and women, in the inner cities of the United States, and you're basically telling them, you'll never have a job. Why? Because public education has given them a lousy education, they're unskilled, and now they can't even work for $7 an hour, and nobody's going to pay them 15. They just don't have the skills to justify 15. I put an iPad there instead. So you're creating a whole huge unemployment. I think in France, youth unemployment, unemployment of young people in France is somewhere between 25 and 30%. Why? Because they have a high minimum wage. Everywhere where you have a high minimum wage, you get high levels of unemployment among poor young people. That's how you get poverty. You know, in California, in the state of California, you need a license from the government to shampoo hair. Yeah, because, you know, they might use the wrong shampoo or they might scrub my hair in the wrong way. I don't know, right? So who does this hurt? Poor people trying to get a job. Now they have to go and take some classes, pay $2,000 so that they can shampoo hair. So all we do when we regulate and control and set prices is institutionalize people into poverty. That's what happens. So you get more poor people, the more the government interferes. And the more we regulate businesses, the fewer jobs they create. So the fewer jobs there are available, the less productive people are. Wages are a function of productivity. If there's less investment in capital, there's less productivity, wages are lower. Everything the government does helps create more poverty. Capitalism is the only cure in all of human history for poverty. Now, Soviet Union and Cuba. Soviet Union were dirt poor. They were starving. In the 1970s, there was famine in Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine, by the way, has the richest farmland on the planet. Used to be the breadbasket of Europe. But because of communism, nobody was incentivized to grow anything. So they were starving. The only reason they survived is because of détente, where the West shipped them massive quantities of grain to feed themselves. They innovated nothing. If you look at the automobiles coming out of Eastern Europe when the war came down, no self-respecting human being would ever enter one of those death traps. I mean, the shock of people, as much as we knew about Eastern Europe, when the war came down and West Berliners actually went into East Berlin and observed the level of poverty, of filth, the most horrible environmentalist record in all of history in terms of clean air and clean water was communism. Because when everything is public, nobody cleans it, nobody takes care of it, everything was polluted. It's not an accident that Chernobyl happened in a Soviet country, not in the West. Space program, sure, they got to space, they never got to the moon, and they never did anything else but the space program, because they were such good thieves. All of the science was either stolen or was extracted from German scientists they brought into Russia. Now, the one thing the Russians were very good at always is mathematics. But to take that mathematics and apply it, you need freedom for that. You need competition, you need incentives, but you need to free up the human mind.